Let's take a second to hear about one of the podcasts that you should absolutely put on your listening list. Take a listen to the Audible original, The League. This new podcast is co-hosted by Super Bowl champion, 5-time Pro Bowler, and legendary smack talker Richard Sherman, as well as sports broadcaster and rising star Taylor Rooks. These two gifted commentators bring voice to The League, an 8-part docuseries about the most bizarre, inspirational, and unlikely stories connected to America's favorite sport, pro football. You won't want to miss these untold stories spanning from the 1940s through the present day. Each story goes beyond simply football and offers equal parts history, entertainment, and social commentary. Go beyond the game and dive deep into the vaults of professional football's incredibly storied and detailed history. Go to audible.com/theleague to listen now.
This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
Doing very well. I have the cleanest office I've ever been in. We just
that makes one of us. I'm glad no one else can see the floor in here.
Oh my God! You should see the paperwork I have in my feed. Like it's like 3 different parts of my life. A pile of paperwork. It's not just like, oh, this is just taxes or this is just this like bills or anything. It's like, no, it's a smattering of everything. It's a smattering of stress that I have. But other than that, I was laughing.
Casey refused to come. She refuses to come in here.
Oh, this is my
like
lair.
A thing in our relationship. Casey just refuses to come into this room. I respect it. I totally
called it the
dungeon.
I called mine the dungeon, but it's upstairs, so it's more like the lair. Like this is just my the little castle where the experiments happen, like the little spire over in our house right now. But yeah, it's going well. Other than that, going great. Yeah, I'm glad I got to talk about my stress at my feet that I got going on right now.
A lot of fun stuff to dig into today. We got the Take Bowl this week. Justin Herbert and Tua going at it, which we'll wade into slowly when we get there later in the show, but we will talk about it. Good talk about Bengals Browns. Feels like the Browns kind of have the Bengals number. Wanted to explore whether that's actually true and why it might be. Talk about Brock Purdy and the 49ers, what that outlook looks like. Backup quarterback in for the Ravens. We have some Falcons quarterback news, even though they're not playing this week, but we do want to talk about it.
Yeah, we do.
Before we get to any of that, I want to talk about what might be the weirdest game of the week, and that is the Lions and the Vikings. A familiar matchup, divisional game, get it twice a year, so obviously not weird in that respect, but it is a historic game for this specific reason, okay? Beller pulled the stat, really appreciate him doing it. In the Super Bowl era, there have been 8 instances in week 14 or later where a team with an 800 or better winning percentage has been an underdog to a team that was below 500. Okay. The last 5 times it happened, week 18 of the 2020 season, the Chiefs had the 1 seed locked up. That was a Chad Henne game against the Chargers that I vividly remember.
Yeah.
Week 18 of the 2016 season, Cowboys had the 1 seed locked up. They were playing against the Eagles. Week 18 of the 2009 season, Colts had the 1 seed locked up.
Sorry, I know I'm ruining your flow. Week 17 then. I know you've trained yourself so well that
week 17, excuse me. Last week of the season is what I'm getting at here.
There you go.
All of these, the last week of the season when teams had the bye locked up.
Every single one.
So this is truly an unprecedented thing for a team with this winning percentage, this deep into the season, to be an underdog to a team with a losing record. But you step back and think about it, and the way that the Lions have looked recently, the way the Vikings have looked recently, it's like, all right, kind of makes sense. I don't think it's that nuts for that to be the line in this game. So there are a couple things to dig into here. One, just the state of the NFC. 2, we've been joking all year. Are the Vikings good? Are the Vikings good? I've asked every single person that's come on this show. Now it's time to ask the markets. The markets have given you a definitive answer, and their answer is no, the Lions are not, or the Vikings are not good.
There's always Vegas always knows, like that. That's what they're kind of saying. They're like, now it's the home field advantage isn't as drastic. I think they've knocked it down like a half point. So it's more that 2.5 instead of 3 now. So they're basically saying, yeah, these teams are about even with these wildly different records and wildly different trajectories of their season. But I think with this Vikings team, there's plenty of stats talk about how has come out about them in 1-score games and how, over time that can fall out. Their expected win-loss is they're basically 6-6. They're 6.3 to 5.7. Their expected win-loss. I mean,
and I'm sure the Vikings, I'm sure the Lions are right around there based on their record in 1-score games.
Yeah, I didn't even look that up. But I'm going to. But also, but if you just want to credit, yes, we like the Vikings do, and the Vikings are fine. It's just that's what I don't want Vikings fans to be sensitive about. That they're like, we're not saying they're bad. It's just that they're fine, as opposed to their record is not indicative of their fineness. And I think just on the flip side is the Lions, and we've talked about this, is they're playing how we wanted them to play in September, and they've really come into their own. Since their bye week, it's always fun to look at teams after the bye week because that's when you can see adjustments. Usually the good teams adjust anyways. And the Lions, since their bye week, which was in week 6, so since week 7, they're 4th in offensive success rate, 7th in offensive EPA per play, and 9th in defensive DVOA. They are a top 10 team, like at every metric, eye test. They're healthier. Their guys are coming back. You're seeing DJ Chark really step up last week. Jameson Williams is coming in. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a star. Their offensive line has gotten healthy again, and they have depth there. Jared Goff is playing within the scheme, and their defense has cleaned up a lot of their woes. This Lions team is not like, a surprising, nifty, this is like a fun Lions team. They're legitimately a good team right now.
They're good. They are good
right now. And that's what I think we just have to realize. That's why the betting markets show this as well.
Over the last month, the last 4 games, the Lions are 3rd in EPA per play on offense, behind only the Chiefs and the Cowboys. Okay. The Vikings are 18th. Defense is what was holding the Lions back the entire year. Their defense wasn't just bad. It was league worst.
Historically bad.
It was so bad. And that tends to normalize. For the most part. If your defense is that bad, it's usually going to get at least a little bit better. Yeah. And for the Lions, they're not good on defense, but over the last month, they're 23rd in EPA per play on defense. The Vikings are 20th. Yeah. So right now, the current state of these teams, there just isn't really an area where the Vikings are better than the Lions, but the Vikings are 10-2, and the Lions are probably not going to make the playoffs.
That's where they have a 10% chance. I think we looked.
Yeah, the tie last week hurt them because they had the tiebreaker over both of those teams, and then now it doesn't really matter because Washington and the Giants tied.
Oh, I know. I kind of want the Lions team in there as well. But that's the thing with the Vikings team. I really dove into the stats, watching them the eye test. They're trying to figure stuff out, especially the 2 tight end looks. They're trying to just piece their way mid-season. That's what's so fun, watching these teams adjust. And I was really hoping after the Hawkinson trade that some stats would really jump. And it's not really. They are kind of middle of the pack in everything, 16th to 25th, and everything on offense or defense. If you look at EPA, you look at success rate, run, passing, offense or defense, there's nothing that really stands out. Explosive play rate, they've been poor on the ground, just generating those explosive plays. I think that's going to become an underrated thing. This is a sidebar. Watching the Rams the last few years, now watching this this Vikings offense, is we underestimated all the play action stuff that comes from it. But those offenses got a lot through the ground. Those Rams teams, a lot of explosive plays through the ground. That's why that 2020 Rams, they started hitting a wall. And McVay's like, man, we don't have healthy Gurley anymore. We don't have a great offensive line that's kicking ass anymore. All right, let's trade for the quarterback because that'll make our lives easier. That's why you make the trade for the quarterback, was because of that. They had that boon down on the ground. And I think that's what's going through with this Vikings team right now. It's they're not getting much from the ground game, but they're trying to find their way in the passing game because they have this guy, Justin Jefferson.
And talk about the lack of explosive plays on offense. No team in the NFL has given up more explosive passes this year than the Vikings.
I did not know that.
16 plus yards. Vikings are dead last.
That's interesting.
The Lions have turned into one of the most explosive passing offenses in the league. This is just a bad situation. And the number that I keep coming back to, and the Lions run less play action than I thought. If I just think of the Lions in my head, they're just this downhill running play action team. And they're actually not. They're kind of middle of the road, even early down play action rate. But it's a big part of their passing offense, and it's why they can get a lot of chunks out of it, right?
Yeah.
Minnesota is dead last in net yards per attempt against play action this year. They're giving up over 10 yards per attempt, net yards per attempt against play action this season. They're 31st in the NFL in EPA per dropback against play action. Like, you can get gashes against this team. And there are very few offenses in the league right now that are better at creating gashes than the Lions.
Yeah.
And so that's why every layer of this that you start thinking about, it makes more and more sense that this line looks the way that it does.
Yeah.
And to take it big picture from there, what does that mean for like the state of the NFC? If this Lions team is an underdog, or I keep doing this, if this Vikings team is an underdog to the Lions right now, then we're looking at the rest of the NFC. The Niners are still 12-1 to win the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, which is a testament to everything else going on there. Congratulations. But this really becomes a 2-horse race potentially with Philly and the Cowboys with not much else to worry about if you really think that Brock Purdy dings the Niners enough. Which it's weird. We're just in such a weird landscape with the NFC right now when you consider all of these different factors.
That's what it is as much as I'm enjoying like some aspects of what Washington's defense is doing, and they're interesting on offense. It's not like an overall like really good team. I'm interested in the Seahawks. Like, I think the Seahawks are actually they're better than I think we're even getting credit for, as far as being a better team than more just a fun story. But it's still not like an overall great team. Their defense gets gashed.
Their quarterback is playing at an extremely high level.
Incredibly
and
high
that's
level.
where a lot of the enthusiasm about the Seahawks resides right now.
And they're young and they have a lot of fun young players. Charles Cross and Abe Lucas both look like studs. Tariq Woolen is in the battle for defensive player or defensive rookie of the year, and they have other young players that are stepping up. Kenneth Walker before whatever's going on with him right now. But that is an interesting team with it's just that you have to recalibrate. Like, I'm expecting, like, basically what the like Seahawks are doing is what I expected maybe the Packers to be, like that kind of, 7-5 with a good quarterback and some interesting pieces all around them. But it's like, that is kind of like the difference of, I think we have to recalibrate some of the team. And that's where I'm at with the Lions. It's that they might not make the playoffs. They have a losing record right now, but I feel better about them right now than I do with a lot of these other teams in the NFC.
Yeah, the Super Bowl odds are weird. Beller dropped them in here, and you're looking at them, and some of them seem a little bit off, but it's because of the road you have to take.
Right.
The Vikings are still 18-1 to win the Super Bowl because there are fewer teams in the NFC that are really elite teams.
And they might
the
get a good
Bengals are
matchup.
13-1.
Okay.
But I think the Bengals are significantly better than the Vikings, but the
Yeah.
Bengals are 13-1 because they have to deal with the Bills and the Chiefs and potentially the Dolphins. The Dolphins are 21. The Dolphins have the same Super Bowl odds that the Bucs do, which feels off right now, but that's also about how hard the road is. The Dolphins right now are the 6th seed in the AFC. They're 8-4. They're 3.5-point favorites against the Chargers, who are 6-6. The Vikings are 2.5-point dogs to the Lions, who are 5-7. That's where we are.
Right there. That's not us. That's the markets. It's just what everybody is feeling right now.
I do love that every single Vikings fan that was crowing after that Bills game. Are the Vikings good? I don't know. Let's wait a couple weeks and ask Vegas what they think.
We still don't know, but I think we have some better, more data points now. The other thing, this is one thing that's kind of I'm interested with the Vikings is they're not very good out of 11 personnel, and they keep going to it, like pass success rate, EPA per dropback, all that stuff. But they got to figure out how to get into. I'm going to keep talking about it until they do it. They got to figure out how to get into 12 and 21 personnel, because that's how they get their chunks. When they're rushing out of 12 and 21, so 2 tight ends or a fullback, is 27.9% rush success rate, which is the 26th. But they're tied for 10th in pass success rate. They have to figure out, this is your offense now with Hawkinson, and they have to lean into it, because last week against the Jets, they were not leaning into it. It's blowing my mind. Why don't you want to do that? On the flip side, their defense, sorry, I did some studies on it, and I have to drop these numbers on it. The other thing too is any Vikings fan or anyone who plays against the Vikings, if you notice, a lot of balls go to the flats, a lot of curl or a lot of swing routes, a lot of flat routes going to the running backs or other players. They are tied for 5th in the worst success rate on balls that go over to that area, flare routes. But they are the best defense in the league at guarding slot players and tight end players. So if you watch this Vikings defense, they just put a shell all around the offense and just squeeze everything inside. But that's probably what leads to some of the play action stuff. Is because those linebackers have to come up and down. They have to go every which direction. They put a lot on Kendricks and to a lesser extent, Hicks. Like, they put a lot on those guys. And so it's interesting. I love looking at the flavors now that we got some more data points, and it's not just like a one-off matchups, which we'll talk about probably with that like Bengals Browns game as well. Like, you got like these matchups are really, really cool.
Well, it's time to get into one more one-off matchup here. We're going to get to our game plan of the week. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, Frank, here's the plan.
All right, here we go. Rematch of a game we've already seen earlier this season. Bills offense against the Jets defense. Obviously, strength on strength. The Jets are 6th in EPA per play on defense, 5th in EPA per dropback. Bills 3rd in EPA per play on offense, 2nd in EPA per dropback. Going back and watching this game from, I believe it was week 9. The Bengals-Browns matchup was week 8, so that's why I have them confused because we're talking about 2 rematches today.
Right.
Anything specifically jump out to you about just the Jets' plan on defense and whether you feel like it was something specifically tailored for the Bills or if this is just something where the Jets in their bones, who they are a slightly bad matchup for Buffalo right now?
It's like a leading question, Your Honor. Jets are going to run what they run. Like they're not going to blitz a ton. They're going to run their quarters look, some 3, some man. Like they kind of run what they run. And I think the way you get after this Jets team, this Jets defense is so much fun to watch. What did you tweet? You had something about the 49ers and Jets defenses. What was with their DNA?
Watch their defensive line. It's like watching a pack of mutant wolves.
Mutant wolves. There we go. Yeah. We got to throw another term in there. Banshees, werewolves, like whatever you have. They are from the same DNA. They play with their hair on fire, but in a controlled way. Like it's not chaotic just to be chaotic sense. Like last year, that Cowboys defense at times could feel like they're just chaos. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, you run on them, they get a huge gash because they have 3 guys in the same gap. This defense feels a lot more controlled, even with that chaotic play. But the way to get after him, again, this is what led to my Vikings Jets point from last week. And I'm just a caricature of myself, was you get him in the base defense with 3 linebackers on 1st and 2nd down, and you can get after him a little bit. But guess what? The Bills can't really do that.
They tried to do it early in the game.
They did.
In the first quarter of that game, they were in. So it's numbers on it a little bit off because I think True Media counts it as 21, but it was really 12 with Gilliam, and they were trying to throw out of it, and it just wasn't really successful. They couldn't run out of it. They couldn't throw out of it. I think they had 9 plays in 21-12, however you want to characterize it, in the first quarter, and then they didn't really go to it for the rest of the game. So they tried to do it and then just scrapped it because they didn't like how it was working. They
just went, okay, hey, Josh, go play for us. Go do some stuff. And that was Josh Allen had his, the coin flips of Josh Allen hit the other way in that game. He had the bonkers interception in the red zone where he blacked out. We say blackout usually in a good way. He blacked out in the bad time travel way of like, what was that? And there's been some theories about why that happened, but it was just not a.
Do we know why? Because I was trying to find some sort of explanation afterwards in a game recap wherever, and I didn't see anything.
No, I haven't found anything. I think people's theories is that he truly, when he looked, because you are assuming a lot at quarterback, you assume this guy's going to keep being open. When he looked, he just didn't see a defender. And then finally, when he threw it, it was behind the guy.
Sight line.
Yeah.
It's like some magic bullet stuff. He was directly behind the linebacker. And so that was my guess, is that he just couldn't see him. But even watching it back several times on the all 22, it's like, what was happening there?
It's just Professor Chaos, man. It was one magic loogie. Like that's really what it was. But the other thing, just diving into stats, and this isn't so much the matchup, is I did want to talk about it, is the Bills, under Ken Dorsey, I believe, have found ways to be more efficient. But since their bye week and since some injuries with the O-line, it's kind of come unraveled a little bit. The O-line struggles. Josh Allen mitigates a lot of the pass protection struggles, but you see it show up in the run game where they can't move the ball. And that's where defenses make it tough on them, daring them to run, and they legit just can't do it. Like they just can't. And it's not a can or won't thing. I had credited Dorsey because I do see him trying to find answers. That's not just, hey, Josh Allen, go run the ball. And one of them to me has been empty formations. And some of that is because it spreads it out for Josh Allen, let him use his legs, but he's only scrambled out of it 10 times when they've been in empty, 8 successful scrambles on those 10. So it's insane what he does as a scrambler. But they have 91 snaps out of empty this year compared to 87 last year. He's cut his sack rate in half, but he's pushing the ball 2 yards further out of those sets. Only Lamar has more empty formations this year, but no one has generated more EPA, just sheer EPA or EPA per dropback. I think Andy Dalton's the only one close with EPA per dropback. He laps the field out of this, and it's not just because he's scrambling like other quarterbacks like, You look at Jalen Hurts when they're in empty. It's like, okay, shot play or he scrambles. They have found a weapon here, and it's like one of the most devastating weapons. It's just put him in empty, which is hilarious because I'm crediting Dorsey for saying, oh, you're not relying on Josh Allen so much, but this is just sheerly relying on Josh Allen being Josh Allen. So I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. But I just think it's that those issues that we have had worries about with this offensive line kind of coming back to haunt them a little bit over time. The last stat I'll drop is weeks 1 through 6 before their bye week. Josh Allen attempts that are 3 seconds or longer. It was 6.7%, which is much better than he has throughout his career. Since week 8, it's been at 14.2% of his past attempts.
That's what I'm into right now.
There.
That is huge. And that brings me back to this matchup last time we watched these two teams play.
Yep.
Is that when they're playing against one of these teams where the Jets didn't do anything crazy. So you look at the numbers, like they ran a little bit more cover 6 than they do typically. The Sauce interception, that was exactly the coverage that they were running. I think that Allen couldn't tell if is it quarters, is he going to follow that route? Is he sitting there? And Sauce sat in the flat and he threw it right to him. Yep. And so when this team has to operate on time against a team that's playing a variety of zone coverages, they tend to not get into a rhythm. It's a little herky-jerky, and you can feel how kind of disjointed it can be over the course of an entire game. This is not the comparison I made when we were talking earlier today. And I know there's a reason for this, right? Like the Niners are hamstrung by the physical ability of their quarterback, but it's amazing to watch a team like San Francisco play where everything is built into timing and rhythm of the offense. And you're watching them go against teams play almost exclusively zone against the Niners. It's like one of the highest zone rates in the league. And you see all the high lows they run over the middle of the field and how they're building in ways to beat zone coverage into the structure of and the rhythm of the offense.
Yes.
The Bills don't play like that. So when they're playing against a team like this, where you don't know if it's 3, you don't know if it's quarters, it's a lot of like just the ways that modern defenses play. And you can't hit those big crossers because that backside safety is catching them, or it's the huge explosive plays get taken away in structure. They don't really have much else. Yep. So that's when Josh has to go into creation chaos mode. And that can be a very good thing. But the floor of that against a really good defense is very low. And his numbers in this game, negative 0.13 EPA for Josh Allen the last time these two teams played. That's Davis Mills.
Right.
Over the course of the season. So the Jets turned Josh Allen into Davis Mills in the last game between these two teams. And I don't know what the answer is to fix that.
That's right. That's the main point right there.
I mean, there probably is one. That's why Ken Dorsey is the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, and I'm an asshole sitting in this chair. But I don't know what the solution is for this lack of rhythm that they can't find against these zone-heavy teams that say, we're going to come with 4. You don't know what coverage we're going to play. We don't trust that you can take advantage of this. And one of the ways they usually can, especially against teams that play a lot of cover 3, is that they're just going to run those hitches and speed outs to Diggs consistently on the outside because teams are terrified of what he can do vertically. The vertical push that he can get, you're getting a lot of. Think about how many just on rhythm underneath throws their little 2-man game has out there. The Jets are really good at outside corner.
Yes.
It arguably is one of the best, maybe the best outside corner duos in the league right now. So the areas where you can attack other teams, you can't really attack the Jets if you're Buffalo, and you have a talent disadvantage up front. So just a lot of different things piling up for why this is not a good matchup for Buffalo.
It's that the Jets defense is so damn good, and they're fast. And that's the thing too, is the Bills manipulate a lot in the hidden spaces. And like you said, Diggs selling vertically in what I call an under route, 5 yards and in those routes, they run them over and over and over. And Josh Allen hits them so quickly on the outside. Those are great when the corners are, insert name here, like just a replaceable guy, because they're terrified. So they run 5-8 yards off, and then there's just all this gap. And then now it's a 7-9 yard gain. Now against the Jets, they run that to Diggs and it's a 4-yard gain. And it's like, oh man, we got to do this 20 times, like as opposed to one breaking through or creating more yards, or they finally take the bait and you hit a back shoulder on them. And that's the thing. This Bills offense is still damn good. They're 4th in DVOA. They're 1st in success rate. They're tied for 2nd in EPA per play, tied with the Eagles, only behind the Chiefs. Still a damn good offense. They just miss some answers. They don't have every tool Like a lot of that's what's really hard about the NFL. And it's honestly like this Jets team. I'm glad you brought up the man stuff because that's what they were so devastating on those over routes. And you see them all the time against the Patriots.
Because teams
for the
were
Bills.
playing a ton of it against them for
Man
no
and three.
reason.
Yeah. And when you run 3 match, it plays out like man a lot. And that's what was the meta for defenses for years and years. And this offense was shredding it because it's like, okay, you want to do this? We'll just hit an over route to Diggs again and again and again and again. And now
Think about what they do against New England.
Yeah.
Who runs with that, and that's what they do.
And Josh Allen, he has improved on that. He's not as much as there's some fan fiction at the early in this year, especially from like Chris Collinsworth and stuff saying, man, he's reading the game like Brady now. Josh Allen's eyes are not teaching tape. Like he plays so unique, like for the quarterback position.
They're
like
chaotic on purpose.
Yes, it's meant to do this. And that when you're in man coverage, say I'm throwing this over out why I want to talk about this, and it's man coverage. I know where to throw it. I don't have to worry about someone else squeezing on, falling off. I can just layer it out and let the throw go and beat the man coverage. When you're playing against zone trying to throw those, I have to be on time. Even with my incredible arm strength, I can't be a second late. I can't be a half second late because they'll punish that. And I think that's why you see so many more underneath throws is that he's realizing I can't get away with those over and over. Like it used to be so easy. Can I play the Patriots every week and just throw this over and over? So that's where I think that's what it is that this Jets defense, they're the bogey team for him. They are built very well to stop what the Bills want to do.
Part of the problem is when a lot of other offenses that are really good offenses fall out of rhythm and you need to find something, occasionally you can turn to the run game.
Yep.
And that's just not an option for this team. You know, you mentioned there are issues up front and, obviously they've had offensive line injuries and Deion Dawkins has been hurt. Quisenberry played last week. And it's the fact that they didn't start well. And now you're getting into backups at times. That's definitely a concern. Okay. This team, last time these two teams played, the numbers are totally skewed because of that Josh Allen huge touchdown run and just Josh Allen scrambling in general. But on runs to running backs, they had a 25% success rate, which would be by far the dead last in the league over the course of the season. They were negative 0.29 EPA per rush in that game, which no team in the league has been worse than that this season. On the year total. Yeah. And on the year total, they ranked 29th in running back rushing success rate.
Yep.
They just don't have that many ways to find a rhythm. So you just fall into this Josh Allen trying to seek out explosive plays, which he can do. He can do that. And it's so funny how these teams go about it in such different ways. I remember talking to Joe Brady this summer at training camp and him talking about coming into Buffalo and kind of learning the way that they operate. And he was saying that usually within an offense, like the timing of the quarterback's footwork is tied to the timing of the play, right? Yes. It's all in succession and it all has to be linked together. Here, it's like kind of loosey-goosey. Like the footwork is not about being timed to the play. It's very vibey. And so if the vibes aren't going, you have results like what you saw in the last game between these two teams, which is just, I'm curious how it plays out this time because it was very disjointed the last time.
It is. I mean, that's what happens. Like there's been injuries, right? But they're still starting Spencer Brown at right tackle. And what you're saying, the vibey stuff. And that's what I'm saying is Josh Allen is still a phenomenal player. Like he's so exciting to watch and everything, but it's not as a former quarterback coach and former quarterback, it's not teaching tape. It's not and that's why I gush about Dak and even Joe Burrow is because, and even Justin Herbert a little bit, is because everything they do is a machine. 1, 2, 3, ball out. 1, 2, 3, 5, ball out. Hit one hitch, check down. Oh, your feet are telling you when to throw the ball. Josh Allen's gifts, and even Mahomes a little bit. Mahomes can kind of do both. That's why he's Mahomes. He can live in the kind of basic tried and true world, and then he also can get funky. I'm trying to think of a director. You'll probably nail one, but that Denise Villeneuve, like that, like who can kind of like do a straight lace movie, but also go Villeneuve. But yeah, I can always just butcher names, man. That's my go-to. But that's the thing is he's hitting against the Lions. I'm rewatching that game. He hits they're empty. He hits a whole shot to the field, 30 yards down the field late. And it works for them. Not everyone else should be living that way. And this is when the coin flips the other way. This is what happens. So this is what it looks like.
I'm trying to think of a director that's like on two ends of the spectrum. And my answer is George Miller. Like Patrick Mahomes in rhythm is Happy Feet and Patrick Mahomes out of rhythm is Mad Max Fury Road.
That's exactly it. Yeah. He's beyond Thunderdome. That's exactly what he is.
I wanted to call out just a couple areas and a couple guys on the Jets defense before we moved on that jumped out while rewatching that game. Sheldon Rankins has had a phenomenal season, and just for what he is within that defense, just like another rotational piece. He was really, really good.
Yes.
The last time these two teams played, they left him on Ryan Bates one-on-one a couple times, including a strip sack where Bates was just not ready. He was not built for that. And the other guy that Sauce is so good. And there were a couple of moments in that game where you could see the communication between him and the rest of the defense. They were motioning into a lot of stack. The Bills do this all the time. They'll do a lot of quick motions to change number counts at the snap. So you're playing with leverages and you're playing with, all right, who's 1, who's 2. It was like a 1st and 10 early in the game. And 15, I think, is Kumaro, motion into a stack with Gabe Davis. And you saw DJ Reed this time motioning to Joyner, like push it inside, like he's now 2. Like you have this if he goes a certain way, and they pick it up beautifully. And the ways that sometimes it's hard when you're watching them play to discern what's man coverage and what's zone if you don't know exactly what you're looking at because of how aggressively they match routes. So there's a lot of times where the Bills are hoping that like some big over or some dig is just going to get not picked up. They're going to drop it. And that's why you can lead to some big gains, some explosive gains. And they rely on defensive mistakes a lot, this team does. And against a team like the Jets that just isn't making a lot of coverage mistakes, you're going to run into issues. And I think that jumped up a lot in that game. And the safeties too, like Whitehead playing downhill on stuff. They just have a mentality that starts at the front, right? We've seen it with the Niners. I've seen it with this Jets team. Aaron Whitecotton is the Jets defensive line coach. He was an assistant under Chris Kasurek for 1 year in San Francisco before they brought that staff over. So that DNA is kind of tied in. And you see that mentality now drifting all the way back. Quincy Williams is trying to like break people in half.
Dude, that's awesome.
He's trying to snap people in half, and it is cool to watch. And Whitehead's doing the same thing. So this is a really, really good matchup. And again, I don't know what the easy answers are for the Bills to find more consistent offense against this version of the Jets.
It's a high variance team against a defense that wants you to play their game. They're going to make you. We talked about last week with the 49ers. I know we're talking about the Jets right now, 49ers defense, and we're going against the Dolphins offense. How would you stop it? That's like, well, we're not going to see it this week because the 49ers do what they do and they get you into their world. And that's what the Jets team does. And Quincy Williams and Quinnen Williams, just Carl Lawson's playing well. Like they just have some real dudes and they play really fast. And that's why the 49ers comparisons, the DNA is there for both of these teams because of how hard they play and what they play.
This is a perfect example. First play of the game in week 8 when these two teams played, or week 9. I can't remember. Diggs goes in motion, a little motion that they do all the time where he motions into the number 1 spot and just kind of goes at the snap. And a lot of the times he's going to run a speed out or a hitch when they do that because he's going to threaten vertical and there's going to be all that space underneath. The Bills know that the Jets know that. And so they just have Diggs go vertical and it's like a 50-yard completion. Well, that was one of their only big plays of the game. And the reason that they think they can hit that is because they knew the Jets would be attuned to the tendencies that the Bills have in those situations. So they're taking advantage of how well coached the Jets are. Like that, those are where they can find explosive plays. And I think that's very telling.
It is. And those are one-offs. That's the thing. It's because it's like you hit, okay, I hit my easy button and we had a gain. Okay, shit. Now we got to run the ball. Like, okay, now we can't do this over and over. We can't go back to that play. Like maybe you could try it, but you better have a secondary answer on it. That's the thing. That's why these matchups are so cool. When you get the repeat matchups going on, now the Jets have some dudes, so they actually can do the things they want to do. Also, the other thing with Sauce, that's such a great example. So that's the thing. Sauce and Stingley coming into this draft, Derek Stingley for the Texans, liked them both. Everyone kind of was like, it was 1A, 1B to me. There's no wrong answer. I thought Sauce would be just such a great man corner. It was kind of the Surtain.
He has the traits.
And the traits, but I didn't realize his IQ. And his football IQ is outstanding from week 1 when they played the Ravens. And then they played the Bengals later. Just his communication skills, that example you brought up, is exceptional for a rookie corner. He is an actually exceptional player already at that position, which is outstanding, which is so cool. And also the other thing was, remember last week, I was like, oh, the Vikings, they played him to the offense's left for 1 snap. And it was a Justin Jefferson TD. I learned why it was because in the red zone, they have him match on the boundary. which was
that's where most of the throws go. Yeah, that's
yes,
he said that after, which is really interesting.
I love that. I know. I was like, I learned something every day. And that's what's amazing about football is all these tendencies kind of start to add up.
All right, we're going to get into another rematch that we want to dig into. Before we do that, though, we're going to take one quick break. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual, so when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's career change, a new relationship, or becoming a parent. Therapy is a great way to work through some of those challenges and help you figure out some of those difficulties that you're running into. I'm a huge proponent of weekly therapy. I've been going for several years now. I love it as a way to check in with myself, work on my goals, talk about just whatever I'm facing and dealing with that week. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/maze. That's better, HELP.com/MAYS. And hard to stay active, here's a gift idea for the outdoor adventurer in your life. The Allbirds Meisel Collection. Designed for those who won't take snow for an answer, the Meisel features built-in puddle guard technology to help keep the winter wonderland where it belongs, not in your shoes. The premium ZQ certified merino wool with All Dasher Meisel provides next level comfort even on the coldest winter days. And their weather ready soles offer enhanced traction so you can go on winter runs with confidence. Built using premium natural materials with a low environmental impact, Allbirds put the carbon footprint right on the shoe so you can see the difference that it makes. This holiday season, get on their nice list when you shop the Allbirds Meisel Collection. Discover your perfect pair at allbirds.com today. That's ALLBIRDS.com.
Tell me about Ohio.
That's awesome.
It's always a mystery. Always there's never no way to know what's coming. All right, here we go. We'll talk about the Bengals and the Browns. Bengals, again, seemingly having a lot of issues with the Browns over the last couple of years. They haven't beaten the Browns since the final game of the 2019 season. The Bengals had nothing to play for in the Week 18 matchup last year, but still feels like the Browns just have something that has given the Bengals problems. And I did find some stuff while rewatching this game and digging into some of the numbers that I do think is particularly interesting. But just at first glance, when you're thinking about these two teams, is there anything just on the surface level that would lead to Cleveland having the Bengals number like this, or is it confounding to you?
It's a little confounding. I think my first, if we're talking Bengals defense, Browns offense, would be because the Browns are a unique team in the sense that they run a lot of heavy personnel and they pound the freaking rock on everybody, and they have their way with a lot of teams. The Bengals defense is very, very good, but that's one way you can get after them a little bit. You get them in heavy personnel and run the ball on them. Okay, so that would be my one answer. On the flip side, for me, it would just been like, oh, well, they couldn't block Myles Garrett. And that was like my first first kind of thought that came to my head when we were talking about this matchup. And also the first time they played was first game Jamar Chase was not in.
Correct.
So was not playing. So
I'll read this list off right now.
Yeah.
Guys that did not play in this game: Jamar Chase, Eli Apple, DJ Reader, Wyatt Teller, David Njoku, JOK, Denzel Ward, Deshaun Watson. And Awuzie got hurt in the middle of the game. So a lot of guys, but it's worth acknowledging some of that, but we'll talk about that as we dig further into it.
I know, but I know you got some really juicy stats with this game because it is super interesting how, and just watching on film, it was kind of, I got some confirmation on it. So I want you to kind of spew out your stuff. It's because it's pretty interesting.
I want to talk about the Bengals defense against the Browns offense, like you alluded to. Okay. So obviously the Browns are a unique team. They run a ton of heavy personnel, but they didn't in this game, by the way. And part of that is because Njoku didn't play. So they ran a lot more 11 than they typically do. Okay. They were in pony personnel a decent amount, but that didn't stop the Bengals from loading up the box. Okay. So in the last time these two teams played, the Bengals were in a light box, so 6 guys or fewer on 29% of their plays.
Okay.
They're at 47% for the season. Okay. So that's very uncharacteristic. So there are 2 things that I was like, okay, maybe this is why. Simply because they're playing the Browns. Teams this year are at 42% against the Browns. So even for this team The Bengals are extreme in the amount of heavy boxes that they play against Cleveland. The other one I was thinking was, okay, DJ Reader didn't play. Did they load the box more in this game than they have previously against the Browns? The answer to that is no. It was actually almost the exact same percentage of heavy boxes that they've played against Cleveland over the last 3 years. So they play them with just bodies up front in order to stop the run. They seem hell-bent on saying, you are not going to run the ball against us. And guess what? In this game, Browns averaged about 3.9 yards per carry. They did not run the ball all over them, even with Reader not playing. The problem is that when they play Cleveland, they sling it around on them.
Yes.
So in this game specifically, they played 45% man coverage, which is even extreme against the Browns team that faces man coverage at one of the highest rates in the NFL. And the Browns move the ball consistently through the air. So if you look at the last 3 seasons, okay, since Kevin Stefanski got to Cleveland, 27 teams have played against the Browns. So one division hasn't. The Bengals are 23rd in EPA per drop back allowed against those 27 teams. Okay. And think about how good the Bengals defense has been for the most part. So they just do, this is real. Like against the Browns offense, they have struggled against the pass specifically. And I think a big reason for that is that they load up the box.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense.
But I'm wondering, are they looking at this and saying, listen, if we keep doing this, we're going to be in trouble. Like they're throwing the ball way too easily. So this is the game plan that they've had against Brissett and then a little bit against Baker. There's no way to know how they'll play against Watson. And I don't think the Browns know how they're going to try to play against Watson. So that's obviously the mystery here. But whatever the formula is that the Bengals were trotting out over the last few games hasn't really worked. A couple small notes that I think are important context there. Cam Taylor-Britt was playing in this game because Eli Apple was out. I think it was one of his first starts. He was playing left corner for the most part. It did not go well. I mean, he had some rough moments, some miscommunication. There was some busts on that side. He's obviously had a lot more time now. He's within the defense. Their secondary is definitely in place in a way that it wasn't back then. The other thing is when Awuzie got hurt, Trey Flowers came in, was having to play against Amari Cooper. A couple rough moments.
He wants to go against Travis Kelce.
Flowers against Amari Cooper on the outside is not the matchup that the Bengals want. So a couple specific layers to it, but I still think that overall, the formula that the Bengals have taken to the Browns has not worked as well as they wanted to. The Browns live in extremes. The Bengals have lived to the furthest extreme when they've played against the Browns, and it really hasn't gone that well.
I know that game against the Browns was the lowest pass success rate of the Bengals have had all year as a defense. Like it's super wild. It's not because that's not the offense that I thought would do it to them. I thought maybe give up explosives, but success rate is a whole different story. That's efficiency. And that's not, I mean, when you're going against a Browns team that's going to have their way in the run game, they're going to figure out a way to run the ball on you. Okay, so we got to stop one attribute of this team. Okay, well, we'll take away the pass. Not going to let them get it. But if they're nickel and diming you and hitting explosive plays in the passing, that's a hard offensive stop for your defense. Especially, I love the man stat because it's stark. Like when you just, we have the ability to look at True Media, and I can just look at the game log, and I can just see how many times a team ran cover one. Like 20% of the time, including that game with the Browns, is what the Bengals rate is to run man. 45% in that game, that first game.
Living in extremes.
Extreme. So it's an interesting matchup. And I think the other thing too is that this the other time I've seen this Bengals defense kind of get after was the Cowboys in their first matchup. The Cowboys, even with Cooper Rush, they're getting after them, and it was another team that got them into heavier personnels because of just how the Cowboys play with all those tight ends. So it's just again, this whole theme of this podcast is like bogey teams. It's the teams that just give these good teams problems. Like a good team gives another good team problems. And that's what this matchup kind of seems like, especially on that side of the ball.
On the other side of the ball, I was, again, searching for things. What's a little bit different? What's maybe a reason if we're trying to search for stuff on the margins, why this might be happening? Coming into the game, the Browns had played 17 snaps of cover 2 over the first 7 weeks of the season. They played 11 against the Bengals, which not surprising. Yeah. Teams have, especially early in the season, it was the first half of the season, we're playing a heavy dose of cover 2 against the Bengals. And it was funny that the final outcome of what the Browns defense looked like in that game, especially in the secondary, without Ward, without JOK back there, I came away thinking, why don't you play like this more often?
all the time.
where you're playing a bunch of different coverages. And maybe it's just because they don't think their guys can handle it. But watching Burrow be unsure of what he was seeing on the back end, it's like, this is the best your defense has played all year. You're giving Myles Garrett a chance to get home, which we could talk about in a second. Right. So that was part of the issue, is that this team had played a certain way for most of the season, for half the year. They come out, they play different coverages than they had. There was one snap, a 2-man, where Burrow thought he had Higgins on the outside, but Emerson was totally gloved up on him. And all the various things that they were doing was giving Burrow problems. So I'm wondering, should they be a little bit more varied against teams that aren't the Bengals? Because it seemed like a good strategy.
Rather than just sit in quarters and let teams just dice you up. I mean, they ran everything.
Yeah.
They ran everything. Because I rewatched that game just before the show, and it was cover 3, 2-man example. That 2-man example is perfect. But before that 2-man on a third down, they ran robber twice, and it fooled Burrow both times. They ran robber, probably because he wasn't expecting it much. And all of a sudden, I'm about to hit this backside dig. Oh, you're running cover 2 again. Oh shit, you're a man. Okay, well fine, I'll still hit the back. Oh shit, the robber guy is right in the middle where my dig is. Oh, I gotta check it down.
So they said that was cover 3 on the in true media on that play. I was back and forth on it. That's what I thought it was too. This is interesting for no one but us.
Yeah, it's robber. I know, right? Trust me, as a quality. That's what these stat guys had to do. Is a lot of stuff I used to have to do and go like, okay, this is cover 2, this is this coverage, and there's nothing worse than you're torn between 2 covers, and you're just like, screw it, robber. But no, it was robber a couple times, and then they had another one where they brought 5 and then they ran man, but then they had basically what the Colts did to the Eagles. They had the safety covering the back, and Burrow thought that it was going to be a botched coverage. He was like, oh, the back got out. Another underrated thing that the Bengals offensive line does, even if they've never had the talent, they're at least sound in what they do. So the back was able to get out, even though the Browns were rushing 5, and then he checks it down and gets tackled short of the sticks. And I thought that there was a couple times that this was when Burrow was starting to eat his vegetables and check things down and work the backs. This is just when he was starting to do it. And you could tell a couple times, he's like, oh, this has been working the last couple of weeks. And when I played the Saints and stuff, I'm going to keep hitting these running backs. And then the Browns were on it. So you could tell he was like, oh shit. Like
they were on it. And they also tackled very well in this game.
Very well.
Like that's not an interesting reason why a defense played better than you'd expect. But when you go back and watch that game, Emerson made multiple tackles in space because they made the corners tackle.
Yes.
Taki made a tackle in space. I mean, they consistently one-on-one in open space were making tackles in this game, which the Browns, that has not been a strength of theirs for the most part.
And that's the Bengals calling card. They are a very good tackling team. Just watch that Chiefs matchup. No, it's and the other thing too is the Myles Garrett matchup matters because, just mentioning it again, Jamar Chase.
That's what I was about to get to, is that there's also one big factor here on Cleveland.
So this guy's pretty damn good, and he's really hard to block one-on-one. So that, guys, usually when that happens is the offense has to provide chip help. And when you're going with a team that's been using their backs so much as check down options, it makes him hang an extra half second. So that can just change up that timing. But the Bengals get this guy named Jamar Chase back, which also helps. And let's see how the Browns tackle when they have to tackle number 1 in space.
And I am curious if with Chase back and now a little bit more time for the Bengals to hone this version of their offense when they're playing against a bunch of these different like 2-eye coverages and everything else. It's been a few more weeks. I think that both of those factors lead to the Bengals probably having a better day. Garrett is just, Jonah Williams had some rough moments in this game. I don't know who 58 is on the Browns. I should have written down the name. He roasted Williams for a sack on a key third down. And then Garrett had 3 drive-ending plays. He had a sack on a spin where they were trying to chip him. That's one of the most disgusting sacks a player's had this season. Myles Garrett's 6'5", probably 280, and he ripped off a spin move like he was Dwight Freeney. Dwight Freeney is my height. So just think about the center of gravity required to spin that tightly and efficiently. Myles Garrett is not that. Watching him do it defies physics. Yeah. And then he had the tip ball interception early in the game is Myles Garrett. And then he also had a stunt where he caved the entire side of the line in, and the linebacker got home to finish off the sack on another third down. So he wrecked the game.
Having those guys.
It's very nice, but the Bengals offensive line is playing better. So that it's definitely worth considering. The last note that I had, this is just a familiarity thing, I think. 2 big plays where the Browns brought Taki from space on a blitz. From depth. So he's not walked up.
Mm-hmm.
Times it up perfectly, both times. One, speeds Burrow up in completion. The other one, strip sack.
Mhm.
They slid the protection the other way. He comes untouched through the A gap. Mixon steps up, but your running back, you don't want him taking on a linebacker full steam ahead in the A gap untouched.
No.
But they timed it up twice very, very well. And I wonder if that's just from seeing a team a lot, understanding if they're going on a silent count on the road, what those tells might be like, and getting a little bit of information, because they hit him with it twice.
Yeah.
So
no,
yeah, these are all of the different factors you start adding up as to why a defense that hasn't been playing very well has a really nice day against an offense that is playing very well.
Right. And maybe they caught him right when the Bengals were making these changes, and they haven't they're not fully formed yet. And I think they have become more fully formed. So yeah, no, it's a lot more interesting than I thought maybe when I first peeped it. Like when I was like, oh no, but because you're like, oh, what do you assume with the Browns defense? Oh, just run on them. Just run on them, nickel and dime them, and just that's all you got to do. But it's like you rewatch this game, it's like, oh shit, they really did give them a lot of issues, especially in that run game. So I'm just curious if the Bengals can continue their like kind of efficient ways and don't defer into, okay, let's find our explosives over and over, because I don't know, the Browns team, they have a beat on a little bit. That pressure example is such a good one, because that's on count, that's on cadence. Yeah. That's something that's okay. All right. Is there going to be a little bit more of that in this matchup?
All right. One more AFC game we want to dig into here, and I want to tiptoe around this fairly lightly. Obviously, we've heard so many different things thrown out this year about about Tua and Herbert, and it's social media quarterbacks and all of the discourse that has emerged here over the last few months. I just want to talk about more than the individual matchups on one side of the ball or the X's and O's associated with this. How we arrived at this moment, I just find so interesting, right?
Yeah.
So before the season, going back to last spring, the Dolphins wanted to hire Sean Payton and sign Tom Brady.
Yep.
Or get Tom Brady. That was the Dolphins' plan at quarterback.
Where they don't have their first round pick next year.
Yes.
I know they
not have a first round pick because of it. They don't have their first round pick because of it. That's what they wanted to do. That totally unravels. Instead, they hire Mike McDaniel, who is probably going to be one of the top 3 betting favorites for Coach of the Year. You can make a very strong argument that he should be the Coach of the Year based on his influence on what the Dolphins' offense is.
Absolutely.
Tua, who they were trying to jettison for multiple different quarterbacks over the last few seasons, is now a legitimate MVP candidate because of the way he has played. They have one of the most efficient offenses in recent memory and explosive offenses.
Yep.
Now, going into the season, the Chargers were legit Super Bowl contenders. They were like the 3rd or 4th best Super Bowl odds of anybody. This wasn't just us talking about the Chargers, okay? Justin Herbert had one of the highest MVP odds of any quarterback in the league. I believe he was probably 3rd after Allen and Mahomes. Now, we've devolved so far in the other direction that instead of Sean Payton being the coach that the Dolphins are chasing, there are now rumblings about whether or not Sean Payton is going to be the coach that the Chargers end up chasing. And that's now where we are. And I think that there's a lot of stuff to talk about and think about as it relates to that, but just the paths that these narratives take and how quickly it can change, I think that this game specifically is a real reflection and expression of that.
So Khalil Mack was traded on the start of the league year. So that was March 16th. So we're not almost 9 months later. How different of a world this is that we're talking about. That's why I learned I was about to be a dad. And then compared to now, like that is basically what world we're living in now. It's astounding to me. Dolphins were just such a curious case going into this year. The Tyreek Hill and Waddle kind of like pairing to me, especially with Gesicki, and now I see how they're using it. But I was like, kind of felt like a hat on a hat. And okay, Mike McDaniel, they're going to run the ball, but I don't think this offensive line's built for that. Who are they going to how are they going to set the edge? And that's just me getting into that schematics. Watching this offense they figured it out. Like Mike McDaniel figured out the strengths of everybody. We got the speed of all speed at receiver, and we have a quarterback that's willing to push the ball into the middle of the field over and over and over. That all works. And that's what's just so funny. You look at this Chargers team, and I went into August saying this roster is stars and scrubs, not thinking it would look like this though. Like I kind of was thinking, oh yeah, they're really top heavy, but even if they can withstand some injuries, and of course they've had a lot of injuries. Like the top guys on their roster as far as their salaries this year is Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. You're paying a lot of those guys a lot of money and they're missing games. JC Jackson's getting benched. The Chargers team was not expecting, this is not an excuse factor either, but they weren't expecting to go into this year expecting to play DeAndre Carter 600 snaps this season. DeAndre Carter has played 700 snaps, 713 snaps. This is his 5th team in 5 years in his career going into this year. He's played 600 this year. Trey McKitty and Gerald Everett have played over 800 snaps combined. This is all the downsides of how they built this roster and how this team has all unfolded this way, while the Dolphins have done ways to mitigate the holes in their roster.
That's perfect.
Amplify all the good things about their roster.
That's exactly right. And I think that's important to not make this an excuse fest or this is why Tua is successful. That's not what we're talking about here.
No.
Okay. The Dolphins drafted Jalen Waddle and went out and signed Tyreek Hill. They made 2 big plays at receiver.
Yep.
The Chargers did the same. The Chargers have Keenan Allen on a big time deal, guys. And they have a $20 million other receiver in Mike Williams.
Yep.
The Chargers have had injuries along their offensive line. Rashawn Slater's missed most of the season.
Yep.
Trey Pipkins has missed a decent amount of time. Corey Linsley has only played 500 of a possible 840 snaps for the Chargers. The Dolphins' offensive line has also had some injury issues over the course of the season. Armstead has missed time. Their right tackle has missed time. Their center has missed a little bit of time.
Yep.
The plan on offense for the Dolphins has been so fully and completely realized in a positive way. And the plan for this Chargers team has completely disintegrated.
Yes.
That is the difference. It's not about whether or not one has help and another doesn't. It's just that the plan around this Chargers team has completely disintegrated. Mike Williams has played about half of the Chargers snaps in this game or in this season, and they haven't been able to live as a result of that. The Dolphins have been able to survive despite the guys that they've lost because the structure and the way that their offense is built and conceived of is so incredibly conducive to their quarterback skill set. The Chargers are not that. No. And when you watch the Chargers play against the Raiders last week,
oh my God,
the Raiders played man coverage on 45% of their snaps. Okay. They only blitzed a quarter of the time, and they led all teams in pressure rate last week. The way that the Raiders played against the Chargers, and obviously Chargers are out, left tackle, starting center, right tackle's out of the game. Mike Williams, obviously, all of that is, we can understand that. The way that the Raiders played against the Chargers last week reminds me of the ways that teams play against the Zach Wilson Jets or against the Mac Jones Patriots.
Right.
We're going to play a bunch of man coverage because your offense is crumbling in front of us and we don't respect you.
Yep.
And it is wild that this Chargers team with Justin Herbert is in that place 13 weeks into the season. But that's what it feels like. It feels like the foundation is crumbling underneath their feet. And it's hard to watch, honestly.
He's never, everything with this offense is hard, which is fine when you have not only just a good quarterback, but players everywhere. You can run this hard offense. Like what the Cowboys do a little bit. It's pretty hard what they're doing, but they got some dudes. they got CeeDee Lamb. They got a great O-line. They got Dak playing well, and they got all those running backs and tight ends. And that's what it is the Dolphins offense is very, there's a lot of easy buttons that they hit. They do some hard things.
Margin for error is so wide. And so again, not to discredit the quarterback.
No.
The margin for error is so wide because good offenses create a wide margin of error, and speed also creates that for you.
Speed kills. Speed always kills. Speed is
Dolphins have, and the Chargers do not have.
Exactly. Speed helps everything. Speed with size helps everything even more. Like the thing about Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, they're great players. They're both slow. I'm not scared to say that. Like they are not fast players. They win by bodying guys up and with some technician as far as Keenan Allen. But it's that offense. I did a cut up of Herbert against the Cardinals, and he's thrown a field out route, which is, I know people are like, oh, every NFL quarterback should make that throw. Yeah, on routes on air, not against NFL corners and who are jump all those balls. Just watch it. He hits 3 of them in one game. And yes, that's awesome. Justin Herbert can do that. Your offense should not be built off field out routes against the NFL corners. Like, I don't care which corners you're playing against. And that's what the offense is, just hard because they don't have players to help, like, give the room for error, and they don't have an offensive play caller or play designer that's giving room for error. So it's just hard. It's just bashing your head. It's check down after check down. It's tightly contested throw after tightly contested throw. Okay, one shot play that works, and then it's just like 3-yard runs, 2-yard runs, 0-yard runs. And Austin Eckler is a great player. Okay, here's another check down to Austin Eckler. It's just all this hard stuff. And then you watch the Dolphins motion and RPOs and just stuff just going left and right, play action, ball over the middle, and just guys running wide open. And that's the difference. It's just well coached with a team that knows how to use their talent. And then the other guys, even if the quarterback is an outstanding quarterback, I think in my eyes, and I think a lot of our eyes, unless you're blind.
This is not just us falling in love with like big quarterback, big arm,
No.
boom, boom. Okay. I was looking this up for a different reason. I was looking up because I was curious about, I think it was Russell Wilson. I was just like looking back at the stats since 2010, like quarterback efficiency. Okay. Since 2010, Justin Herbert ranks 11th in EPA per dropback among quarterbacks with at least 1,000 attempts. These are the quarterbacks. And that includes this season. Okay. That includes this rough season that he's had. Since 2011 or since 2010, here are the quarterbacks that rank ahead of Justin Herbert in EPA per dropback. Patrick Mahomes. Peyton Manning. Drew Brees. Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady. Tony Romo. Jimmy Garoppolo, which we can get into in a second. Phillip Rivers, my king. I just he belongs in this conversation.
Yes.
Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan. That's it. He's in year 3. And that includes a year where they've been below average offensively.
Yes.
That is
and his rookie year.
Yes. And so the rookie year, we talk about some sliding doors moments, and I want to talk about a couple of them as they relate to the offense here in a second. Think about if they had kept Shane Steichen.
Right.
Because try to figure out why Herbert was so good as a rookie, independent of, he can just overcome anything thrown at him. This season has been a sign that they really can't, and very few quarterbacks can. But I don't think we understood at the moment how good of an offensive coach Shane Steichen was, who became their interim offensive coordinator when they fired Anthony Lynn.
Anthony Lynn was the head coach. And then, so it must have been
Wiz. I think it was the offensive coordinator. Now I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. He was the interim, and there were some talk back then. I think Tom Pelissero tweeted that he was a strong internal candidate for the job. He doesn't get it. We all know what's unfolded over the last couple of years. I think Shane Steichen will probably be a head coach after this season ends based on what he's doing with the Eagles. He's the Eagles offensive coordinator, by the way.
And if you look at what the Eagles do, is nothing like any of those Chargers offenses. This guy's a North Turner guy. This guy is old school, like play action, deep 7-step concepts, which the Eagles actually kind of do, but they dress it up in a totally different way, which just speaks to good coaching and good play design and understanding your personnel, as opposed to thinking that you have Alvin Kamara and Drew Brees on every snap of the dominant offensive line.
Every single bet that the Chargers made about the team that they wanted to be has failed. Okay. They go out and they trade a 2nd-round pick for Khalil Mack. They give JC Jackson a huge contract. They were number 1 in cash spending on defense in the NFL this offseason. Number 1 in cash spending. They're 28th in EPA per play on defense. Rich Rebar from Sharp Football Stats tweeted out something earlier this week that I just thought was mind-boggling. The Chargers defense has given up 26 plays of 30-plus yards this season. It's 32nd in the league. They've given up 13 touchdowns from outside the red zone. It's 32nd in the league.
Oh my God.
6.7 yards per play on first down. That's 32nd in the league.
That
includes ranking 32nd in yards per rush and pass on first down. They've given up a score on 42.9% of drives, which is 29th in the NFL. So this team that spent more money on its defense than any team in the NFL is now one of the worst defenses in the league. And I know that Joey Bosa has been hurt. I know that JC Jackson has been hurt, but other teams have injuries too.
Right.
Like, stuff happens. And guess what? No one made you spend at the top of the market for JC Jackson. You can build depth by doing that. No one made you trade a 2nd-round pick to pay for Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack's only like $9 million against the cap this year, but you can spend $9 million on a free agent and use that 2nd-round pick on somebody. They went top heavy with these things, and they don't have depth as a result of it. We've talked about this a million different times. They only had 3 edge rushers on the 53-man roster when the season started. So you lose one of them, and now you're down to Chris Rumph and Khalil Mack. And when Rumph gets hurt, now Van Noy is a full-time edge rusher. And then you go onto the offensive side of the ball. They draft Zion Johnson in the 1st round. Okay, with this thought of we're going to have better protection, so that's going to allow us to push the ball down the field. Sure, we don't have speed, but we're going to bully people over the middle. Then Mike Williams gets hurt. Then Keenan Allen gets hurt. Their offensive line is bad in protection up in the middle, even with the guys healthy. Johnson hasn't been that great. Matt Filer's definitely had a regression season.
Yes.
And now all of these elements of this is who we want it to be has started to fall apart. All of the elements of who the Dolphins want it to be have fallen into place almost exactly how you would plan it.
Right.
And now we see the contrast between those two teams.
That's what it is. It's when you're swinging for the fences and you whiff every single time. You're not even getting on base. This is what happens. It's astounding that, like, I mean, I went to the year. I mean, you asked me, you're like, what's holding you back from like really liking the Chargers? And I was like, man, I just watched their tight ends, and like everyone falls in love with Gerald Everett because they watch the one explosive play by him, like that he gets 1 or 2 a game, but they don't watch the 40 to 50 snaps in between. And that when this offense is built, we're talking about room for error. It's not built to have the loosey-goosey Bills, a little bit what the Dolphins do. Dolphins are kind of a mix, but like we just talked about the Bills. They're laissez-faire. Okay, everything. The Chargers are not built that way. They're built efficient, everybody perfect. And then they have guys botching plays left and right. That's why I was just like, man, I don't know. Austin Eckler is not in the game. Who's protecting? If the team blitzes and you have an offensive line that's getting injury prone, the center's not picking up, the running back has to stay in protection. They have guys botching that all the time. So it's just like, it's an offense. I mean, we've talked about this like a dozen times. It's an offense built on being efficient and perfect. And they have a bunch of players that aren't efficient and smart and perfect. And it's just, that's team building. That's like room for error, whatever you want to say about this team. And they just whiffed on all the other ways that we're supposed to mitigate that. Oh, we'll just have the stars carry us through those tough times in between those inefficient plays. And that's what happens when you're built this way. They just don't have enough of those role players that can help them out down to down basis.
All right. We're going to take one more quick break, talk about some quarterback changes before we get into some picks and fourth screen and get out of here. It's always around now that we start thinking about what next year will bring. We make New Year's resolutions to work out more, but let's face it, they rarely stick. Well, Peloton's got a gift for you. Get up to $200 off accessories like cycling shoes, heart rate monitors, and more when you purchase a Peloton bike, Bike Plus, or Tread, and up to $100 off accessories with the purchase of a Peloton guide to take your workout to the next level. Make this the first step toward achieving your fitness goals in the new year, and once you start, you'll see why so many people stick with Peloton. With a variety of workouts from cycling to scenic runs, boot camps to power walks, you'll find classes that work for you, taught by world-class instructors who know exactly how to get the best out of you. So, don't wait. Get this offer before it ends on December 25th. Visit onepeloton.com. All access members separate. Offer ends December 25th. Cannot be combined with other offers. See additional terms at onepeloton.com. The holidays are here. You can achieve gift-giving greatness when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha steaks. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have put together special, curated gift packages to help you take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code Mays at checkout to get $30 off your order. You can send an assortment of mouth-watering favorites guaranteed to impress, like the legendary Butcher's Cut Filet Mignon, air-chilled boneless chicken, ultra-juicy burgers, and even easy-to-prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. Omaha Steaks is ready to ship your order right away, so shop early and beat the shipping rush. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code Mays at checkout. Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com and use promo code Mays at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. There are few worse feelings than when you're at an event and you're trying to look and feel your best, and you're in a stiff, uncomfortable dress shirt. Weddings, big work meetings, anything. That's why I'm so glad I found Mays and Nate. The company was born when Mays and Nate's founder saw a sweat-drenched DC staffer running into a meeting. Wrinkled, stained, exhausted, his shirt needed a refresh. And that's what drove Mays and Nate to make the world's first performance fabric dress shirt. Fast forward 10 years, and now they make incredibly comfortable flannels, pants, sweaters, and jackets in that same performance fabric that they've become famous for. I've worn Mays and Nate shirts to a couple of the weddings that I attended this fall. I've looked great, felt great. Can't recommend them enough. So if you want the best cold weather clothing this holiday season, check out Mays and Nate. Right now, if you go to maysandnate.com and use promo code Mays, you'll receive $35 off any regular priced order of $125 or more. That's $35 off when you go to MIZZENANDMAIN.com and use our promo code Mays.
Isn't that the San Francisco treat?
That's funny. That's just something about Mary. I appreciate Bella really digging around here. For some
I love
fun
him.
drops. All right. I want to talk just very briefly here. We talked about it a little bit on Sunday, but just the realistic expectations for a Brock Purdy-led 49ers team, okay?
Right.
Some of the numbers we're throwing out here. Football Outsiders had their playoff odds at 95.9% chance before the Jimmy Garoppolo injury, about 93.4% chance now, almost negligible. Their Super Bowl odds to win the Super Bowl fell about 5%, from 8% down to 3%, okay? So they go from, as Brian Knowles from Football Outsiders contextualizes here, a second tier kind of Super Bowl contender, one step down from everyone else, to legitimate still dark horse Super Bowl contenders. We heard some news earlier this week that Jimmy could theoretically come back late in the playoffs. Kyle Shanahan didn't sound super enthused about that.
Right.
But starting this week against the Bucs and then moving forward, what is a realistic expectation for a Niners team quarterback by Brock Purdy based on what you saw last week?
Oh man, I feel like that dark horse Super Bowl contender is kind of like where I'm at with him, because watching that performance, it's Brock Purdy's just gonna be it's a rookie quarterback, it's undrafted, or it's a late guy, like not a first day pick.
It was the last pick
It's
of the draft.
irrelevant. And as much as I watched that offense and literally running the exact same plays that they ran with Jimmy G, that they're running with Brock Purdy,
I was wondering if over the course of the game anything changed.
Nothing.
Like play action rate, shotgun rate, under center, whatever they were doing. Every single number is in with like 0.5 percentage points of everything else. That might be because he comes in mid-game, right? Like
right,
maybe
they're not
changed
game
something
planning
moving forward,
yeah.
but nothing about the offense changed when Brock Purdy came in last week.
Same exact concepts. Like they were just like, yeah, this is what we're running. So they're always the joke about Kyle Shanahan wants his quarterbacks so he could just be the joystick. They're the controller and he's going to hold the controller and just go, you throw here. I always do the motion as I'm talking about controllers too. Like I actually threw that button to the B button there. But I think with watching a Brock Purdy offense and watching all that, it's like you can get 75% of Jimmy G out of this, 80% with maybe a little bit more creation, but he's also going to be a little more chaotic than Jimmy G is.
Yeah.
The rest of the roster is just so freaking good. The playmakers they have, the defense they have, they're still a good team, even with insert name quarterback here. And the more I just look at it, like they had 8 games where they started Nick Mullins as a rookie.
So that's what you got to go back to here.
That's what I look at. And his QBR in those games, he was 51.7 QBR. That's basically the league average, 50. That's kind of what I'm expecting out of this. And with a really
positive
good roster.
EPA per play as a quarterback, positive EPA per dropback as a quarterback under Kyle Shanahan. Positive.
And their weapons are so much better than they had in 2018. So it's, I don't know. I'm not as down on this team as I thought. You just have to be realistic. I'm not going, they are not going to miss a beat without Jimmy G. I'm not saying that, but I do think that they are more of a good team than I think people are realizing. People are just writing them off. It's somewhere in between, as always. I would consider, like, as you put it, more of a dark horse Super Bowl type of team that can win a playoff game for sure. Like, that's how I'm looking at them right now.
They're a top 5 passing offense, top 6 passing offense with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
No.
With Brock Purdy. But if they can be slightly above average with the way that their defense is playing, they're still dangerous, even if they're not like a true Super Bowl contender at the same level as the Eagles or the Cowboys or some of the teams in the AFC. And I think that's what has happened here. And the Eagles in 2017, it's a little bit different just because Foles could go on such weird streaks, and I just don't know what that's going to look like. But you look at the way the offense and how it was structured last week, the same offense, they ran the same exact kind of stuff. He missed more throws. Yeah. I mean, there were throws available to him that he just missed. And it's his first game. It's a 7th round pick. He's playing against it's a huge matchup. Yeah. And he goes in without any sort of warning. You're going to spray a couple. Like there's a lot going on there. So it's not surprising. I go back to the number we mentioned earlier about Garoppolo and his EPA per dropback compared to all of the quarterbacks since 2000. Kyle Shanahan has constructed an offensive system that has made Jimmy Garoppolo Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
Like that's what he's done.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable. And some of the other numbers it was just shocking. Digging back through some of it, I was looking at the other quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan has coached over since 2010. That was the cutoff that I put on it. Matt Ryan, during his 2 seasons with Kyle Shanahan, had the same EPA per dropback since 2000 as Drew Brees.
Right.
Matt Schaub was essentially a top 10-ish quarterback. He was like the same as Jimmy has been over this stretch during his 2 seasons with Kyle Shanahan in Houston in 2008 and 2009. Look at what Nick Mullins has done, or what Nick Mullins' stats were. Nick Mullins was an above average NFL quarterback. He was a positive like their offense was a positive passing offense with Nick Mullins, who is he on a team right now?
He's the Vikings right now.
Yeah. Okay. So he's bounced around. Let's just say that. He's been on several rosters.
He was with Cleveland last year.
It's not like he's locked into a backup job somewhere. And their offense was still their passing offense was positive with Nick Mullins in the game.
Yes.
So that's what you have to bet on. Is you have to bet on the infrastructure and Kyle Shanahan and all of this stuff. You know, lifting this guy to the point where it's not going to sabotage your chances, even if you're not going to be a top 7 passing offense anymore.
Yes. That's what it is. It's still a Shanahan run game. They just have leaned into that stuff less because they didn't need to the last few weeks. They're just like, hey, we're sprinkling our runs. We're not doing as much nakeds, but guess what? It's not like they threw those out. Like it's not like it's just that they were just reconfiguring the offense because they had these freaking awesome weapons that they could just keep on the field for every snap. They could just go 21 personnel every snap. Guess what? They can still do it. Like
I'm wondering if they do go back to more under center play action and more boots.
I think they have to.
That would make sense. Yes. If they were just putting the training wheels back on the offense because they feel like that was the best way to generate stuff with the backup quarterback in there.
But that's what's so funny is that how many of the same concepts you saw in the first quarter or last 2 weeks with the 49ers offense, and then you just see it. They're just like, hey, Purdy's in. Well, all right, same call sheet. Like we're still on opening script. Let's keep going through it. So I just think you're going to miss, like you said, that he's going to miss some easy throws. He'll mitigate some of that with some chaotic creation plays because that's how he just plays. He's one of those guys that bonks his head and thinks he's Josh Allen. Like he's just one of those types of players. So there's going to be some of that. I just think it's just funny. It's like it's just going to be a little bit of a different flavor than maybe even what Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins was more a very efficient by the numbers type of quarterback. So it's like a little different flavor. But if they can get Nick Mullins at a QBR, like you said, positive EPA, a QBR of 51, that is legitimately that's the same that Mac Jones had last year. Okay. All right. So this is what Kyle Shanahan could do with no-name quarterbacks, and not to say Brock Purdy's a no-name quarterback. He had a fine college career, but it's just, that's what we're given. And I think
he's the last pick in the draft. You don't have to be nice. He was the last pick.
I'm trying to be nice.
We're talking about the tapestry of NFL quarterbacks. Brock Purdy is not a sought after asset, right? Like that. That's how we can frame this.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Speaking of quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks, how they can keep their teams afloat.
Love the segue.
Let's talk about the Ravens and Tyler Huntley very quickly. Obviously, a very different situation with Lamar and the Ravens. Seems like Lamar is only going to miss a week or two. That's my understanding. 1 to 3 weeks has been the report. So unlikely to play on Sunday. Obviously, the Ravens are 2.5-point underdogs against the Steelers. Realistic expectations for the Tyler Huntley-led offense in Baltimore, in your mind?
The Ravens do a great job in the sense that, I said this on Sunday, is that they have a backup that matches the play style of their starter, which is Lamar so unique in how he plays. But that's how Huntley plays as well. He's a Diet Coke version of Lamar. Like just play style, how he throws it, where he throws it. It's kind of actually really funny. But that's what you're getting. You're getting 70% Lamar. Like that with Tyler Huntley. We've had enough tape on him. We saw him last year. He's going to create some plays. He can make some big throws. Lamar is always going to be underrated as a pocket passer. I think Huntley will look to bail more than Lamar does. So I think that's what you're looking at with Huntley, that he can make enough plays and do enough in structure to keep the offense going. But it's not Lamar. That's where I'm at.
All right. So then the Ravens next 4: Steelers, Browns, Falcons, Steelers. Okay. Let's theoretically say Lamar misses all those games, just to throw it out there.
Make it fun.
Still feels like they could win 2 of those, right? Probably at least 2 of those. So now that becomes a situation where the Bengals, their next 4, they have the same record now, obviously. Browns, Bucks, Patriots, Bills. Okay. So even if the Bengals go 3-1 in those games, and the Ravens go 2-2 in their games, if the Ravens win in week 18, they have the tiebreaker over the Bengals. So they would still win the division. Mm-hmm. So even if they go 2-2 and the Bengals still somehow go 3-1, we'd be in a spot where they would still have a play-in game in week 18.
I just looked at 538 real quick. And their playoff odds, if they lose to Steelers and Cleveland the next 2 weeks, they still have their 72% make playoffs odds, which is pretty outstanding, like for what situation they're in right now.
So they should be in pretty good shape. Last thing, quarterback wise, before we get into some fourth screen news, right before we started recording, not right before, earlier today, doesn't really matter. Desmond Ridder is going to be starting for the Falcons moving forward, replacing Marcus Mariota. Obviously, the Falcons are on bye this week, so they're not playing, but just wanted to dig into it real quick because you were a big Desmond Ridder fan. And I also think that it's interesting. I mean, where the Falcons are and what their quarterback situation is. What do you think about this?
I'm very excited. Mariota played well enough in the first month or two to, okay, you can't like just bench this guy. Like it's just not.
They were one of the most efficient offenses in the league.
It was awesome. It was I keep trying to tell people, it's like, this offense is awesome to watch, but the kind of turned into a pumpkin, I would say, the last few weeks. Just more tape is out there. Defenses are really keen on what they're doing. You lose Kyle Pitts, even though people are going nuts about his targets and stuff. He was still a huge component of that offense and their versatility and what they did. And there's just too many open. The thing with Mariota is he was having some crazy plays in the negative sense. There's just too many open opportunities that he wasn't hitting. So
highest off-target percentage of any quarterback in the NFL this season.
It feels like it. It feels like it. I had a clip where we were playing Washington and Drake London makes a great catch on the dig route, and people didn't even care about the catch. They're just like, what was that throw by Mariota? And it's like, that wasn't the point of the clip, but it's like, yeah, that's a lot of this with this Falcons offense. The thing with Ridder, I'm a huge fan of Ridder. I think he has a lot of traits that I like. He's a great athlete. I mean, he ran a legit sub 4.5. He is very tough and competitive. And watching him going into his last year with Cincinnati, they won games with him. I'm really glad to hear that because that head coach of Cincinnati is now the head coach of Wisconsin. So it's really nice that I can compliment this team. Is he got better every year and he looks like a tireless worker, and he seemed to have an understanding of concepts and how to play football. They were running real NFL concepts for him, and he's hitting backside digs. He's hitting everything on time. And on top of that, being a very good athlete and very tough. So that's why I was very optimistic. I'm glad they're giving him a stretch of games here. This is the flip side of, okay, you're out of playoff contention. Maybe we're not going to be that team that maybe we'd sneak into the playoffs, but now you actually get to see if this guy has a shot, and it just opens up so many paths. If he actually is okay, or if he's not, then you can kind of go, okay, maybe we'll look in the first round for some of these guys. But I think it's a really good situation to be in, and coming off a bye week for the Falcons. I just think it's a very well-planned and well-timed thing for this team.
This team has been very thoughtful about how they were going to add and develop quarterbacks. Yes. They did not take a quarterback in the first round of the 2021 draft, in large part because you look at other examples in the past about teams that draft quarterbacks with no infrastructure around them and how it turns out. It's often awful. Yeah. And this team was going to have to tear it down. They knew that. And the Matt Ryan contract, all the dead money that they were going to have to eat. This is one of the worst rosters in the league. And that's by design or by necessity. They didn't want to drop a quarterback into that. They know they need a quarterback, though. And so by drafting Desmond Ridder in the third round, you allow yourself to handle it however you want to.
Right.
If you draft him in the second round, there is probably some pressure or some urgency to play him and make him your starter sooner rather than later. But with that 3 next to his name, you can do what you want. Mm-hmm. And now you get a month with him to figure out what he's like in real game reps before you enter the offseason and think, do we need to go find a quarterback elsewhere? Is now the time to do it. Right. And I think that they've done a good job of understanding all the different elements that should play into this. And now they're going to get their information, and it's going to allow them to potentially make a decision in the spring. So I'm excited to watch it. It was time, but this was the right time.
It was.
This was the right time to do it before the bye. There's no reason to throw him in there before you know what you have, all that stuff. So I'm totally fine with doing it on this timeline.
And that's the thing with Arthur Smith. Not only you say it's one of the worst rosters, and I agree with that. That's a credit to what Arthur Smith and the offensive staff has done. Correct. And DP does enough on defense to try and confuse guys, but they have nobody. AJ Terrell.
Oh my God. Smoke bomb.
Oh yeah. That's the whole defense. But the offense is like, this is very real. This is sustainable. Wait until they have some dudes. Like, this is going to be really cool. Arthur Smith has shown time and time again. And I know some of his kind of anti-media, anti-fantasy kind of comments could come across as harsh and like, oh, this guy's an old timer. This guy is very thoughtful. He is showing that he understands okay, let's just not just hit this because we have to. Where he doesn't do anything. Everything is well planned out. The fact that he's starting after the bye week, I'm sure the last couple of weeks he was like, oh my God, he watches Mariota miss these throws and he's like, oh yeah, I want to throw the rookie in there. It's hard to be a rookie quarterback. It's so freaking hard. He understands that. He's not listening to the siren song that I think a lot of us, including myself, might listen to. He does not care. And that's awesome. I think if you're a Falcons fan, you should like really be happy with the trajectory of what this guy is putting out on the field and his thought process with a lot of the things. So I don't know. I just want to tip of the cap to him because I think that everything he's doing is checking a lot of boxes that I like.
All right. It's time for Fourth Screen. Let's get to it.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Sometimes I don't think about the fact that people might be watching the show for the first time or listening to the show for the first time. Every week on this show, I have 4 screens that I program and the noon slates, and it's noon for me in Chicago. And I let our listeners argue for what the 4th screen should be. And this week we have a repeat winner for the first time this year.
Wow.
Morgan Hickson, who also won in week 3. We had to check this and decide if we wanted to roll someone back. But when you have the best email, you have the best email.
When you're hot, you're hot. Yeah.
Yeah. This is about the integrity of the competition. It's not about spreading the ball around.
Yeah.
All right. Morgan says, come on, Robert. I know it's tradition at this point, so you still have to ask people to pitch them, but you know there's a clear answer for your 4th screen this week. One game will easily be most competitive, as every Steelers-Ravens game ends up as some bizarre government social experiment to see how weirdly a game of football can get to 17-19 with 1:57 to go. The second game is easily the most intriguing young player matchup, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson against a tough Titans D. How will the young marriage respond? Tune in to find out. But this is your 4th screen we're talking about here. It's not about watching weird and competitive close games, nor is it about an exciting young player being tested by a savvy defense. Fundamentally, your screen has always been about one thing: pain. You relish it, you study it, you're horrified by it, but you can't look away. What better personifies that energy than watching what the 17-point home favorite Dallas Cowboys are about to do to the Houston Gamblers of the USFL? Wait, I mean the Houston Texans, allegedly of the NFL. Although at this point, is there really a difference? If the Gamblers and Texans played, wouldn't the spread be closer than this spread? I think we both know the answer. Every Texans fan who tunes in to watch this game is either a masochist or is being subjected to cruel and unusual punishment by their local TV network. Why else would you subject yourself to watching your moribund NFL franchise get swallowed by the Lovecraftian horror that is the Dallas Cowboys? The Cowboys were on a 130-point pace in the 4th quarter of the Colts game. That number might get exceeded by halftime of this game. And by the way, I'm saying all of this as a Cowboys fan born post-95. The Jones family has systematically designed their team to teach me not to trust, love, or hope for anything. All I've known for the entirety of my fandom is disappointment and heartbreak. I'm well aware they could come out of Sunday and commit 25 penalties for 350 yards, turn the ball over 4 times, and make Davis Mills look like Tom Brady. I think Kyle Allen is starting. That could easily happen, and I still think the Cowboys win by 17. Do you know how unfair the world is to the Texans when I'm this confident in the Mike McCarthy coached Dallas fucking Cowboys? It's undeniably must-watch TV, so watch.
Wow.
Great.
Strong.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Really good stuff. All right.
That was great.
It's time for picks. Let's get to it real quick.
Boo Jimmy's lock of the week.
Ooh, that's a big lock, all right.
All right, here we go. Bo, you're destroying us in this. I feel like pretty embarrassed about where I'm at. I have never purported to be good at this, though. I asked out of it last year. I didn't want to do it this year, but I was forced into doing it. That's kind of where we are, and I have done very well. I'm 31-29 on the season. Like, it hasn't been a total train wreck, but I'm also not doing great. Okay, this week, we talked about it. First segment of the day, and I talked myself into it. I'm going with the Lions -2.5. I think the Lions are better than the Vikings right now.
I like it. I almost did it too. I'll let you get to the other ones, but I almost did that one too.
I don't feel good about any of the rest of them. I had the Jags +3.5 against the Titans. Titans are in a weird spot. I think the Jags have been a lot better than the record this year.
I mean, firing their GM mid.
Hey, really quick though, Trevor, no practice again for Trevor today because of that toe injury from last week.
Yeah,
it wasn't a shredded knee, by the way. Again,
it was not a shredded knee.
So I'm taking the more than a field goal that the Jags are getting. Essentially, my thought process there. We talked about the Jets and the Bills earlier today. The 9.5 is a lot, and I just think this Jets defense is playing so well. I really trust them to keep it close in this game. Famous last words. I got the Bengals -5.5 against the Browns. I don't envision a repeat performance here from Cincinnati. I think that getting Jamar Chase back, all the stuff they figured out on offense, the Browns offense with Deshaun last week looked pretty rough. So I don't know how that's going to go. I'm picking the Bengals there, and I'm going Seahawks -3.5 against the Panthers. I keep picking the Seahawks and getting burned for it, but I'm going to do it again.
Oh man, I'm the same way. I did also God, I've been on a cold streak ever since my son was born. So that was
already blaming the kid.
I have nothing to worry about. I have no responsibilities.
No, and I wish I could say, oh, I haven't been studying. No, when I'm feeding them late at night, I'm looking at spreads. So don't get me wrong. I'm 34 and 31 on the year, so still above 500, but I went from 60% to that. But right now, I'm also going the Seahawks. I keep picking against the Panthers, going, well, they're not going to win games. They're a garbage team this year, and they just keep hanging and keep covering. So, but here I am betting the Seahawks. I do think they are a pretty good team. I'm going to Chiefs -8.5 at the Broncos.
Oh yeah,
just because they got pissed off Mahomes. He wasn't happy losing that game against Burrow. He's keeping track of these losses now. I'm sure they all are, and they're going against the Broncos, who are just sad. And now the next one, I'm going Dolphins -3.5 at Chargers. I think there's a little bit of a correction going on with the Dolphins. Maybe a little. I actually thought the spread would be a little larger. I was a little bit surprised by this. So going 3.5.
And
I think this
like
Dolphins
the idea of the Chargers.
Yeah, like us. I think this Dolphins team's going to put up some points. So it's going to be a boat race, and I'm not going to really betting on the Chargers, who make everything look like a slog. Famous last words, all this. Next one, Panthers -1.5 at the Cardinals, or Patriots -1.5 at the Cardinals. This one does actually just, I think the Patriots are a way better team. I don't care if they're on the road. I don't know. That one's scary to me. I also think this Patriots defense is damn freaking good, even if they've had a couple bad weeks, but I think it's a good defense statistically and eye test. Last one. This is our classic. We break down the game, and I talk myself into it. Is Jets +9.5 at the Bills?
Yes,
I'm the same way.
We're morons.
I think that, yes, the Bills are a better team, and their Jets are starting Mike White, but I just think this Jets defense will keep it close and they cover. So +9.5.
You guys almost got me there with that one too. I was just staying away from it. Not like I'm trying to bet the Bills -9.5, but as I was listening to your conversation, I actually typed it into the sheet for a second, but I ultimately took it out here. Let me go with one unanimous pick for us: Seahawks, Panthers. Don't know why this is 3.5. It's up to 4 in the actual betting markets right now. Yeah. Love the Seahawks in this spot. I mean, they should cruise
I
in this
guarantee
matchup.
You we're like 2 Brian Burns sack fumbles. Like it's become inevitable now. I'm putting my stink on it.
Gino Wickscale with going against McAdoo, right?
Oh yeah, but he likes McAdoo, doesn't he? I think all the comments have been about that.
We're reaching there.
Robert, with you, Bengals cruise -5.5. Love them. It's probably my favorite play this week. I'm also with you, Nate, on the Chiefs -8.5 against the Broncos. That one feels suspiciously low with where these two teams are right now. So give me the Chiefs -8.5. I'm going to go against you, however, on one, Nate. Give me the Cardinals catching that 1.5 at home on Monday night against the Patriots. Patriots, 6 wins. The quarterbacks they played in those 6 wins: Mitch Trubisky, Jared Goff when the Lions were in that weird midseason thing, Jacoby Brissett, Matt Ryan, Zach Wilson twice. 6 losses: Tua, Lamar, Rodgers. Fields ran all over them. Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen.
But he hasn't gone against Cliff yet.
He has not. Massive coaching in favor of the Patriots. I will still go ahead and take the Cardinals. And then I've got one unique game here. You guys talked at the top about how top-heavy the NFC is. I think we're going to see that best personified in Eagles and Giants. Eagles are 6.5-point favorites on the road. Saquon, now on the injury report. They all out of nowhere, whether he plays, whether he doesn't play, whatever, Eagles cruise. I think they covered the 6.5.
We'll get to that game on Sunday night, I assume, if it's worth talking about. So we have a lot to dig into on Sunday night. And guess what? We're back tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, when Rams-Raiders is on the schedule, you got to do a live pod afterward.
Have to.
We missed a couple weeks. You had a kid. Thanksgiving happened. I was on the road last week.
Yeah.
We got to start doing these again eventually. So we're going to break down Raiders and Rams. We also haven't talked about the Raiders at all. And the Raiders offense has been playing extremely well. So this is a good excuse to get some Raiders time in.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
it's like family time.
I'm sure we'll
All
be
talking
talking about Max Crosby a little bit tonight too. Against
goodness gracious.
this offensive line. It might be a little ugly.
So please come back, check out solely on our YouTube page. It is not available anywhere else. You can come watch our Raiders-Rams recap after the game tonight. If you have not, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can do that in the link in the description below. If you're watching it, you can just click a little button that's near you, I assume. I don't know. Sunday night, we will be back with our Week 14 recap. Please come back and check that out. In the meantime, please go listen to the Football GM with Mike Sando and Randy Mueller. Please go listen to Prospects to Pros with Dane Brugler and Andy Staples. Our draft show, it is getting to be draft time. Really getting into it now. I know you know, man. I know you're about to really know. Please go check that out. They do a fantastic job. So do Randy and Mike. In the meantime, we really appreciate you guys listening. We'll be back tonight. Until then, talk to you soon.